Maria Finn and her trusted companion and truffle dog, Flora Jayne, join us tonight to present Truffle Lust and Puppy Love. Besides her interest in ecology, foraging, Maria is an author, chef, and storyteller. On our website, by the way, on the meetings page, it lists some links to some of her stuff, so you can go there. Now, at this point, I was going to say that after the Zoom presentation, we're going to have a demonstration of a truffle hunt with Flora, and but we're actually going to try to film that and continue with the Zoom. So hang in there. I don't know if it's going to be seamless. Yeah, it's a little bit dark. It's going to be outside, but we have some ambient light. We'll figure that out. So please welcome Maria Finn. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to try to go into present screen. Let me know if this, oh, we're sharing. Hi, everybody out there. Now, oh yeah, that's a problem. Present, okay, full screen. I want to do present full screen. Just, okay, present, come on.
Stuff on the Zoom to share.
Yeah, Zoom to share. Share. Right here. Oh, here it is. There it is. And share. All right. Here and go present. Okay. Right. So I'm going to stand up while I give this talk, if that's okay. I taught college for a very long time, and so this is just what I'm used to. And hopefully Flora stays like this. There's no telling. She may run back and try to eat the crackers up again. But I'm going to tell you a story. Oh, there she goes. She's off. She should be fine. Just don't scratch one of her ears. She has a reoccurring allergy infection in the ear, and so that's the only thing. But you can pet her anywhere else. She's very friendly. Are we able to? Let's see. Right there. Okay. Okay. Great. So the meeting is being recorded. Okay. All right. So I was up in Salt Point. This is about, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago. And I was foraging for porcini. And I'd found some. And so you know how happy you are when you're in Salt Point and you have a bag of porcini. And I was walking through the campsite, the Gerstle Cove campsite, and I saw David Campbell. And I said, hey, you want to see my porcini? And he said, he wasn't interested. He didn't care. He said, wait here. And he goes to his van and he comes out with a jar. And he goes, I just got back from Italy. Smell these. And he handed it to me, and I unscrewed the cap and I put it to my nose and I inhaled. And it was like nothing I had ever smelled before. And I smelled rain and soil and violets and strawberries on the skin of someone I once loved. And it was like the essence of a forest. I never wanted to leave. But then he was kind of coughing. He was like, hey, give me that back. You know, I should be too long. That was my very first experience. I never tasted a truffle. You know, I had heard of them. I'd heard of truffle. I'd had truffle oil, which I hope everybody knows has nothing to do with truffles. It's total bullshit. There's one truffle oil coming out of Oregon with Oregon white truffles. It's fine. The rest of it is steroided out, just imitation. But then about a week later, I was working as a journalist, as a food writer. I got an invitation to a talk at the Napa Farm Bureau. They were having, the American Truffle Company was having, giving everybody a talk on why they should plant truffle orchards at their vineyards. And so I went to that and I got very excited. And I was like, I want a truffle orchard. And they're like, you live on a houseboat. You can't have a truffle orchard. But they invited me to the Truffle Festival. And so and this is, they fly in these Michelin chefs from around the world. And so the first time I ever got to eat a truffle, it was like, the first one I ever had, and this was a Perigord truffle, was the one I smelled. And so this is what they had at the Napa Truffle Festival, was Perigord truffles. They were importing them from France. They were not growing here yet. And it was just shaved simply over a sheep's milk pizza, like a pecorino pizza, nothing else, just pecorino cheese pizza with that. And then I had it over polenta, I had it over salmon, all these different ways. It was just this marvelous weekend of getting to eat truffles. But the highlight of that for me was, let's see. Oh, so this is my very first smell of the truffle. And so this quote I have by Harold McGee: when we smell something, it's because particles, vaporized, airborne, molecular interest momentarily become part of us. So has anybody read the book Nosedive by Harold McGee? It's fascinating. It's all about scent and food, and he has a whole section on truffles. So the Perigord truffle has 400 volatile compounds. And so each one can smell different. Each one has its own personality, but they do something to us. They don't quite know what that is yet, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So when I was at the Napa Truffle Festival, I was invited for a truffle dog demonstration. And so one of the vineyards that had planted a truffle orchard, it was a very young truffle orchard, and everybody wants Perigord truffles. Those take the longest, and they are pretty finicky, really. So there's not a whole lot coming in yet. Right now, Kendall Jackson Winery is actually doing quite well. They have a very prolific one, but not a whole lot of other ones just yet. Burgundy are more prolific, Bianchetti more prolific. But when I got there, they had planted a truffle, and I met Rico the truffle dog. Rico was a Lagotto Romagnolo, which is a breed from Italy. And really, any dog can be trained to hunt truffle. They all have a phenomenal sense of smell. They can smell the past. They can smell the future. I mean, if my dog starts barking, it looks like she's barking at nothing, I know something's about to round the corner, right? Something I can't see, I can't smell, but she knows it's coming. And so Rico is a Lagotto Romagnolo, a breed from Italy that is specifically bred for truffle hunting. Now, originally, they were water dogs. So they date back to 4th century BC in Etruscan art. So they're a very ancient breed. So everybody thinks she's a doodle. In fact, somebody asked me if she was a pit bull poodle mix the other day. Yeah. And I said yes, with a little bit of Italian opera singer mixed in. But so these guys were used to retrieve the waterfowl in the lakes around Rome for the Lagoti, where the people of the lakes, the Etruscans were. But as Rome expanded, they filled in the lakes, and they didn't have a job. So they have the web feet, they don't shed. They're kind of like a Portuguese water dog, just smaller. So they began using them for truffle hunting. So, but they were work dogs, and they're still kept in cages by the fields, the truffle fields in Italy. So when they talk about kidnapping each other's dogs over there, have you guys heard about that, or read about that, or seen it? So the tuber magnatum, the white truffle from Italy, it comes a lot from Croatia and other places as well, but you cannot cultivate it. That's why they're so expensive, and they're very rare. You need to have a dog to find it. So they oftentimes will steal each other's dogs. They will kidnap them. They will poison each other's dogs. Last year in the region of Abruzzo, 30 dogs were killed in one weekend. So I avoid those truffles. I also avoid them because they cost $3,000 a pound. But you can't cultivate them, not yet. So it's very profitable, and it's a very kind of deadly for the dogs during the season. But what had happened years ago is they were work dogs. So like, this dog has a good nose, this dog has a good nose. So they almost went extinct about 40 years ago. And then they started a kennel di Cavalli. And so they were to maintain this breed of Lagotto. And they were bred, and they are bred exclusively for truffle hunting. So when I met Rico, I was like, this is a dog for me. Oh, because the other thing that happened, a friend of mine in Germany had one, and she said that hers trained itself to go get porcini. It just ran into the forest and came out with porcini. And I was like, why would you have any other dog? So, and I'm on a houseboat, so, they like water and, the whole thing. But you can only get one in Italy or France. You couldn't get one in the United States at that time. So I just thought, I'm not going to have one. But then they started to become just more popular here. People started importing them. And I was hiking in the hills of Marin, and a woman walked by with one. Flora Jayne, get back here. Come on. And a woman walked by. Where are you going? Where are you going, Katie? And a woman walked by with a Lagotto, and I stopped her, and she said, yeah, I got it, breeder in Santa Barbara or something. So I started following these guys on Facebook. And I'd had this dog on my vision board for 12 years. And when she was badly behaving as a puppy, I'd always yell, that was not happening on the vision board. That did not happen then. So she is a good girl. So maybe a little bit of cultural history of truffles. So in ancient Greek times, ancient Roman, they loved truffles, and they believed that they grew when Zeus hit a spot with a lightning bolt. And they would often erect temples in that site as well. And they were the favorite food of Venus and Aphrodite. So they were considered an aphrodisiac even back in ancient times. Now, this idea of lightning storms and thunder having a relationship with truffles is actually not that far off. So in biblical times, there's a desert truffle, and it grows in a symbiotic relationship with the rock rose bush. And it actually is not underground. It will break the surface. But in the fall, when there's a lot of thunder and lightning, they say in the spring, they're going to have the truffles. So they call them thunder fungus. And in the Bible, remember the manna from heaven, when they're like out wandering the desert and there's manna from heaven? Those were most likely truffles that they found. And they're very different. They're soft, they're spongy, they're high protein. They'll cook them in like a stew. You can actually get them on Amazon in cans. And there's whole truffle kind of markets over in the Middle East. So they still, one of the most ancient traditions is the Bedouin women in the Negev desert, and they have special songs that they sing when they harvest these truffles. So this is just, but then back in Europe, the Middle Ages came and they outlawed truffles. So one thing that happened in the Middle Ages, they deforested much of Europe, which is now why they think the plague actually happened. We're learning that, right? That a lot of these viruses, the zoonotic viruses that pass from animals to humans, the more we deforest, like Lyme's disease in the United States, the more you take these forests down and you move subdivisions into them, that we actually are exposing ourselves to viruses. Same thing in the Middle Ages. But they decided that they were witches' stones and devil's fair because they drove women to lust, because they incited lust in women. And so, and they also, like, mushrooms are very much associated with witches, and that comes from Middle Ages when they were doing the witch hunt. And I know how many people in here know mushrooms that can make you sick or kill you. How many people in here know the mushrooms that are good for you and can heal you? All right, you're all a bunch of witches. But you are witches. But so they disappeared. They disappeared entirely. Nobody ate them. They didn't talk about them. Catholic Church had banned them. But then the Renaissance came. And when they brought back the arts, they also brought back the culinary arts. And somebody dusted off this ancient Rome cookbook and by Apicus, and it was called Truffles, the Daughters of the Earth and the Gods. And truffles came back into vogue during that time. So there is this idea that it is, and I may have this later, but I'll just tell you now about this idea of the aphrodisiac and truffles, is that when they isolated the different compounds of the Perigord truffle, and actually the truffle, and they probably all have this, is there's a compound called aldestronol, and it's found in the saliva and the testes of male boars. So that's why female boars or female pigs are so easy to train. You don't even have to train them to go get truffles. That's why they use truffle pigs. That is also the isolated compound that I don't know if it's that one or another one they isolated for the truffle oil, that it kind of has that steroided out chemical taste to it. And then, and males have that. Human males have it in their sweat glands. So people who are attracted to men will oftentimes be more attractive to truffle than the scent of truffle. And it's a chemical response. But the other thing that happened during this time is that there were dueling popes. There was a pope in Avignon and a pope in Rome, and they used to have dueling dinner parties, and they were kind of competitive. And so they wanted to have truffles at their dinner parties. So they published a list of permissible pleasures. And truffles became a permissible pleasure with the Catholic Church. So during the Renaissance, they reversed the outlawing of truffles. And then Catherine Medici was married off to, I don't remember which Louis in France, but she brought the white truffle with her. He had whole truffle hunting expeditions and parties in France. So truffles enjoyed this just tremendous resurgence during the Renaissance. Now, this brings us to pigs. so I don't know if you guys seen the Nicolas Cage movie, The Pig. It's actually quite good for like a Nicolas Cage movie. It is, don't you think? Like I saw it on an airplane. I wasn't expecting much. It was really very good. But the reason, so everybody says, well, so you don't have to train a pig, right? It's just going to go and it's going to find them. And there's a story that was a farmer in France and he hadn't been able to get his wife pregnant. And he watched this sow go and eat a bunch of truffles. And then she had a bunch of piglets. So he started feeding them to his wife and she got pregnant. So that was like one of the origin stories. But they are really hard on the roots of trees. You know, they just go for it. And so Italy outlawed it. It's also, you know, most people don't want anybody to know their mushroom spot, right? You guys know that. So if you're a French farmer and you're walking into the woods with your dog, that's normal. If you're walking in with your 600-pound pig, everybody knows what you're doing. So that's another reason. And then you have to beat them off. And it's pretty brutal and it's pretty difficult. And you know, a lot of French farmers lost fingers doing it. So you've got to fight them for the truffle. And so dogs are much easier. There are a few truffle farms. There's one in BC that has a couple of miniature pigs, you know, which I think would be cute, kind of cute. But, you know, it's just easier to put your dog in a car and go somewhere. So the first truffle was a tree, was cultivated in France. And these were the Perigord or the tuber mellisporum. And, you know, there's a lot of failures and starts and, you know, but they nailed it. And so they grow mostly on oak trees or hazelnuts. And in the region, the Dorguignon region became the Perigord region. And then there's a Burgundy region for the tuber insulatum or the Burgundy truffle. And, you know, in Italy too, and France, there's this deep, rich truffle culture. And they have, you know, the blessing of the dogs and the truffle hunters. And for a while there, truffles became kind of this, kind of a common food. It was no longer just food of the kings because there was just so many pounds of truffles going from trains into Paris that a lot of people could enjoy them. However, war is very bad for the truffle. So not only did it destroy the truffle orchards, but it killed a lot of the men who knew how to find them and cultivate them. And then a couple of other things that happened that kind of really impacted truffles that before the wars, though, is there was that disease that we imported from the United States that killed a lot of the grapevines in France. I remember what that was called. It was something like noble rot or something. And so you had a lot of vineyards wiped out, and then the mulberry trees that they were growing the silkworms on also got a disease and were wiped out. So they replaced both of those with truffle orchards. So there's huge amounts of truffle orchards. There's naturally occurring truffles. There's huge truffle renaissance, but it really was war, World War I, World War II, that really just stopped the production of it, destroyed the orchards, and killed a huge male population. And so, however, they have continued out of France to innovate and to export the truffle trees. And so right now, every continent in the United States except Antarctica, there are truffle orchards being planted, and something to the tune of like 3,000 acres a year. And what's really great about this is that it's really a de facto reforestation. And so they're planting these orchards, and they're planting them with, you know, fungi spores on the roots of the trees. So it's going to be a healthier forest when it comes in. And then it also is going to be, it's another revenue stream in a lot of places, and it's a tourism stream in a lot of places that are rural and don't normally have those. So in California, our very first one was planted in like near Willett, Laytonville, near Laytonville. I never really saw that. It was for sale a couple of years ago for about $240,000. But apparently it's a very problematic piece of property. It's the guy who planted them. He planted Perigords, and his Frenchman sold it to him. I want to say, what was it? It was like 1970s, something along those lines, 1987. I can't remember exactly. Sorry about that. But he died, and his sister inherited the property, and she didn't maintain it. And then the drug cartels moved in and had a shootout and a murder on the property. And then, yeah, welcome to interior Mendocino. And then it was in disrepair. And so a young man got a group of like 10 investors, and they're going to do a communal living, and the Truffles are going to pay for it. And it was just starting to do well. And they kind of had a breakup. So they put it for sale. But apparently the property is kind of hard to get to and very steep, but the truffle orchards were starting to produce again. And in California, a lot of the wineries, a lot of wine country, a lot of people are planting truffle orchards. They're starting to get them, and it may, that may work out down the line. So one of the reasons that these are spreading the way they're spreading, and this goes back to our olfactory. So with Flora Jayne, when she's learning, when I let her, for me, everything is truffle training. People always say, did you train her? And the answer would be, technically I did, but our routine throughout every day is truffle training. I let her stop and sniff, and I wait. And I just let her practice smelling, and I've started smelling. I've started developing that. Has anybody here read An Immense World by Ed Young? It is a fascinating book, and it's really about animal perception. And there's this whole world of perception that we don't even know about. That they might strike, a rattlesnake might strike at a mouse because of heat. It doesn't smell it, doesn't see it. It's heat that it's sensing. So there's this world of smell with dogs and with ourselves. And I'm realizing like what a pleasure it is to just let yourself smell. There's right on the road from me is a bakery, and it's not one you can buy anything from. They just bake for the stores, but you can just stand there and smell it, and it's just huge pleasure, just to do that. Or I live on the waterfront, so I'm trying to smell when the tides are in and out before I even look at it. So we can retrain ourselves in the world, but our scent goes right to those hedonic hotspots in our brain, and what happens there is that's where sex, that's where food, that's where all of these things in our pleasure center go. So the truffle hits all of those. So it really is something that people, it's kind of seduced us and brought us and convinced us to plant it everywhere. Now, truffles are a really remarkable tree or fungi to have in the forest. So it was Suzanne Samard's work, and I know it's a little bit controversial when she talks about the wood wide web and mycelium, but it was a rhizopogon, which is a false truffle or pogey that actually her research was based on, that she says is the communication node in the forest. And it is this mover of energy throughout the forest in the same way the mushroom mycelium are. Interestingly, with the truffles is they need a female and a male. So they're not releasing their spores above ground, it's underground. And so the truffle itself is female. The biggest consumers of the wild truffles are squirrels and chipmunks, flying squirrels. On the truffles, there's spores. So when a truffle is ready, and this is why if you buy a truffle, you only want a dog harvested truffle. Oregon white truffles had a really terrible reputation for a very long time because they were raped by humans. So people would go out to trees where they knew they grew. You can see the little squirrel holes, right? Because the squirrels dig them up. So if you go under the Douglas firs, you can see the holes, and you can take a little rake and you can rake. You can damage the roots, or you can do it gently and not damage the roots. But that truffle might not have any scent because it doesn't have a scent. And if it doesn't have a scent, it has no culinary value. And so people went out with rakes in Oregon. They raked a bunch of them up. They didn't have a scent. They had no culinary value. And so people had them and they said, oh, those truffles are terrible. But that is just not the case. Same thing with the A lot of the truffles coming from China, and they're counterfeit truffles. They'll mix in with Perigord truffles. If they were not raked, if they were found by dogs, they would have a value. They would have a culinary value. They all, they all have that, but they just have to be found by an animal. But so what happens is when their spores are ready and they want them to be spread throughout the forest, they release the scent. We can't smell it, but all the animals can smell it. So the squirrel, especially a flying squirrel, it's quite brilliant, right? It eats it, and then it's pooping truffle spores out all over the forest as it flies around. And it's spreading the spores. And they can just sit there like a speck of dust for 100 years, until the process starts. So the rodents are spreading them, the wild boar is spreading them, all the animals can smell them and spread them. We don't really even know they're there. And so this is the tuber gibbosum. This is our spring white. We have these in California. Now there's 100. Well, the next slide will talk about wild truffles. And so I don't want to do. I don't. Here, let me see if I can move it. I can't. Shoot. So in California, I think it was Richard Harkness in the 1800s when he was asked. He was like considered the father of mycology in California. And he was asked what his favorite mushroom was. And he said his favorite to find was the tuber gibbosum in Mill Valley, under the oaks. So this is where we were hiking every day, pretty much, somewhere in Marin under the oaks. So I was very excited about this. So then in the 1970s, a group of scientists went up Mount Tam and they discovered tuber gibbosum on Mount Tam. Charles Schultz learned about it, and that's how Snoopy became the truffle hound in the Peanuts. But so there's about at least 140 types of wild truffles in North America. And I'm sure Noah Segal knows about 500 more types of wild truffles in North America. He doesn't need a dog to find them. He knows them all. But when I got Flora Jayne, and she was about 4 months old, and it was COVID lockdown. So that's when it finally, it was, and I started applying with different Lagotto breeders in the United States. And one woman she's just right out of Central Casting in Santa Fe, New Mexico, called me. And nobody else got back to me because, as you remember, everybody was trying to get a dog. So it was very hard to get one. But I wrote, she needs to be a female. She's going to be a work dog. Because females, as they say in Italy, those are the best truffle dogs. They can focus better. So this woman called me and she said, I've got your dog. She said she's smart. She needs a job. And so I got her when she was about 4 months old. And I put pieces of porcini, pieces of chanterelle. And I don't have any matsutake around my house because matsutake is a really good one to train dogs on, but I don't have those around my house. I didn't bother with that. And then I had truffle oil. So I was basically training her to find truffle fry, but that's what I had. And I would hide them around my house. First, make it really easy for her to find. And she had a little work coat, and I put her work coat on, and I'd say, go. And when she'd find them, I'd cheer, and I'd give her a treat. And we did this, and I'd make it a little harder, till we went outside. And I would bury them, and you kind of tag the trees. And I thought she was ready to go. But what ended up happening is first the chanterelles and the porcini came, and she had zero interest, like none. She would step on them. She just could not have cared less. And I was like, we're walking around Mill Valley. We might be walking over these tuber gibbosum all over the place, and she doesn't care. She's not actually a truffle dog. I already loved her, so I would have lived with that. But so I contacted Alana McGee at the Truffle Dog Company up in Seattle, and she said, come on up and we'll take her out. So we went to a live truffle field just north of Seattle. And she said, look, she's a puppy. She's never smelled a real truffle. I hadn't seen a real truffle in the wild, because they look like stones. They look like dirty little stones in there. She said, and the weather's really bad. She said, but I buried a couple. I marked them with a flag. She said, it's a live truffle field. She might find them, but just be patient. She probably won't. But her grandmother is from the Kennel di Cavalli in Italy. She was a truffle hunter, that professional. So I put her jacket on her, and she ran into the woods, and she started finding truffles everywhere. So I trained her that it's a lot of DNA, because I hide chanterelles, and she'll sometimes go up to them. Actually, we saw one of a Mendocino last weekend, and she just stepped on it. So we have not advanced that much with it. But so she started finding them, and there the Oregon whites and the Oregon blacks. And then we went down to Oregon. This was Washington. We road trip down there. We found them down there. And it's funny, before we left to the dog park, some guy said, well, isn't truffles are so bougie? I was like, yeah. And we came back from hunting them in Oregon, and I checked into a hotel, and we both were covered in mud, both of us, like entirely. And my pockets were filled with truffles. I was like, this feels really primal. It doesn't feel bougie. It is a little bougie, but it feels primal. So this is a little video of her. And what's really interesting about watching a dog hunt truffles is you get to see how scent travels in the woods. So it's never a straight line. It is kind of like she'll move sort of like a sailboat. Sometimes she catches the scent on the ground. Sometimes it goes by in the air, and she'll do a head snap and then start to follow. But this is her. And truffles, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, they like a Douglas fir tree, 40 to 60 years old. Oftentimes Christmas tree farms and places that were had been clear cut a couple times and replanted. So it's really remarkable that, after everything they've done to these forests up there, that they come back and they get truffles. And I imagine it's a pretty big part of the regeneration. So the really young ones aren't going to have them developed yet. The really old ones don't need them, because like the other mycelium mushrooms, they create the web that pulls in the nutrients, that pulls in the moisture they need. The tree sends them the carbohydrates and the sugar. Okay, let me move to the next one. And no. Okay. So when people talk about truffles, they oftentimes talk about prices. They talk about the very, very expensive truffles. So these truffles are not that expensive. And I think culinary wise, the Oregon blacks can be, and I'll tell you why. It's because these guys have a very short shelf life. So once any truffle comes out of the ground and it has its full scent, it starts to lose that je ne sais quoi like every day. Every day you get a little bit less. This is why they're so excited about having a California truffle industry, is that the chefs in San Francisco, having our local ones, they can get them when they're 1 day old instead of a week, 10 days old. Sometimes truffles can get caught in customs. It's pretty scary for the truffle dealers, because they've got $10,000, $20,000 sitting there in customs, and every day they could be going bad. So we really want to have our local ones, but the problem is that a lot of the chefs are like, that's not a Perigord truffle. That's not, the Italian tuber magnatum. But you guys all smelled this and you tasted it. It's a pretty fabulous truffle, right? And so like you could probably get, like, if they sold these at the farmer's market, like one of these for like 20 bucks. So that's not outrageous. And you can put it with eggs overnight like that. It will infuse it right through the shell. Then you make a delicious little omelet and shave it over the top of it. And so so it isn't like it's the outrageous kind of prices you would get in restaurants. And then this is, I talked about a recipe in my cookbook. It is it's the creme brulee. So I infuse the cream with the Oregon black truffles, and then I'll shave the truffles over the top, and I put Sakura cherry blossoms that have been preserved in ume plum vinegar and salt over that. So all of the truffles, like all of the mushrooms, one is not better than the other. They all just have different culinary uses. Like, I don't know. And everybody's like, well, what's your favorite mushroom? To me, that's like, what's your favorite color? Like, a lot of them have, like, a morel, a black trumpet, a porcini, they're all delicious. I don't love chicken of the woods, I have to say. That's the only one. There's like, they're early and there's a lot of them. I'm like, a friend of mine calls them tofu of the woods. And I'm like, that sounds about right. But of the 140 species we have native here that we know about, there's probably like 5 of them that we know that are delicious. There's a brown one. There's the pecan truffle that comes out of the southeast. I think there's a Chesapeake truffle, but we don't know. There's probably many, many more that we don't even know about. One of the problems with looking for truffles is that I'm not allowed to pick mushrooms in most places in California, and the two places I am, I'm not allowed to take a dog. So, um, so I don't really worry about rules. And I found a truffle in a place I wasn't supposed to be. It wasn't a truffle, it was a rhizopogon. But I sent a picture to a truffle hunter that I learned from, John Getz up in Oregon. Some people may know John. He's also a very fierce Matsutake hunter. But and he said, keep going because you might find a whole new species nobody knows about because people aren't out doing it. And so there is a possibility of there being a lot of species and a lot of delicious species that we don't know about. I know, baby. So this is a quote from the gourmand Briant Severin. The truffle can on occasion make women tender and men more apt to love. So that is part of the truffle reputation. All right. And then this is my cookbook, Forage Gather Feast. So it has lots of mushroom recipes, truffle recipes. And then I also have a company called Flora and Fungi Adventures. And this is how I met Maria Fan, which is why I'm here tonight. She was at my anchovy workshop at Fisherman's Wharf. And I just did a sea urchin one up in Mendocino on the Van Dam Beach, doing some mushroom workshops on some private winery land, and just, gosh, what else? Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Seaweed, wild foods, and perfume making. We have a perfume making, nature-based perfume making coming up in Sausalito, and with a wonderful artist. So if you're interested in my newsletter, please sign up. If you're interested in my cookbook, just take a picture, and I also have like little bookmarks there. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And then we'll go outside and Flora Jayne will do a demonstration. So this will be her work. When this goes on, she knows she's working. So that's her sign. And she is food obsessed, which is what you need for a truffle dog. If you have a dog that doesn't like treats, you got to figure out another way to motivate it. I mean, some people we do some. We have been invited to some asked to survey and hired to survey some truffle orchards. And and somebody there said, "Oh, you should get her a little toy because she gets her toy when she does." I'm like, she's not gonna fall for that. She wants food, and she usually gets a very high quality treat. She usually gets hot dog or meat. But I stopped at a Rainbow Grocery on the way here, and they do not carry hot dog or meat because she has kind of a lame treat tonight, but she'll be fine. She has a Rainbow Grocery dog treat, healthy dog treat. Yeah. But does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So typically she'll go and she'll smell something and she stands right over it.
She starts to dig. And I have to be right there with her because I don't want her to scratch it and so she'll dig and sometimes you can't see it. So when you're training him, you do a second touch with the nose and it's called, and I say, show me, and she'll kind of brush it with her nose because you'll be digging through the dirt and through the pebbles and you're like trying to find it. And you're like, is that it? And sometimes they're really small too. But you also kind of learn their body language. So we spend a lot of time in the woods together, a lot. And so, this is, with training her too, I would let her do things a lot of people wouldn't let their puppies do. I'd let her kind of get up to the edge of not super steep cliffs, but I'd let her get there. And I just let her learn boundaries and trust. And I kept asking people, why are Lagottos truffle dogs? And people say, oh, because they can focus or their sense of smell or they bond with their owner. But really, they're forest dogs. That's what they can run under brambles, over logs. They're strong. She can go up a rock wall, about an 85-degree angle. So they're just really good in the forest. And so we spend a lot of time in there. And that too is part of training, is everything. Playing tug of war with your dog is training her, because you're communicating and you're making eye contact. And so when it's a really little Oregon white, she just walks by, brushes it and keeps moving. If she gets in there and starts digging, and then I'll move stuff out of her way, I'll get in there with her. If I see it, I'll pull her off so she can't scratch anything. But she doesn't eat them. Some dogs do, even Lagottos. When we were hunting once with a young male Lagotto, they both were eating them because they were kind of getting territorial, so we had to separate them out. Yeah.
How far down are the truffles in the soil?
Usually 2 to 6 inches, but they can be pretty deep. And we have a lot of things where we don't find a truffle, and I'm wondering if they're very deep or we're off about 6 inches or so. One at a time. Yeah, but you'll be in a patch, so the places we find them are known patches. So, we'll be in a patch and we'll find them, but there's rarely, I mean, so there could be two, and the black and whites can be in the same patch. You won't ever find, apparently, you'll never find a chanterelle. You won't find a truffle on an oak or around a chanterelle. That they won't grow on the same trees. Mhm. Why it evolved? I don't know, and and the fact that it evolves so differently from the other ones, that it's requires a male and a female for the DNA of male, and it requires an animal to dig it up. It does have an advantage during drought years, and so it may have a climate change advantage because it's underground. Um, but no, I don't know what the evolution of that is. Some years are better than others, you know. Well, yeah, if you have a truffle orchard, you should get a crop every year. And again, based on your temperatures and your rain and everything, some are going to be better than others. And there's some truffle farms in Oregon where one farm is doing great, and then 3 miles over, same conditions, nothing. So they've got that same mysterious mushroom quality that they all have. That you're like, there's no telling. And so you want a pH between 7 and 9 is what you're looking for. So if you're out looking for them in the wild, you can test the soil, or you can just learn your plants. Like if there's anything in the rhododendron family growing out there, I know there's not going to be any truffles. The soil is just too acidic. The vineyards in Napa and Sonoma, there's some places in Lake County. Everybody's trying. Kendall Jackson's the only one that's been getting any amount that like you could do much with. So they're still buying them from Europe. But I have convinced a woman at my farmer's market who owns a cheese company, Romani, and she makes buffalo mozzarella and burrata and things like that. We're going to do a big batch with the Oregon whites. And the owner of Nopa restaurant shops at the same farmer's market in San Rafael. And so I've convinced him to try these because they're excellent truffles. They're pungent and they have a nice flavor. They're just a little, it's the same thing that they used to say about Napa wines, right? They're not European, they're not good. Well, or that the only good wine is a $200 bottle of Cat. That's just not the case. Uh-huh. Yeah, if they are not ready to be dug up, there's no scent. They shouldn't dig them. And you also, it's sometimes when you're training your dog, you want, like, sometimes you use your subpar truffles, and I'll freeze them and I'll do that. But you generally don't want to train them on rotten truffles, because then they're going to hunt rotten truffles. And so some people, like, if they're really good, they'll train their dogs for the exact stage they want them. But I'm just happy to find them. We're not there yet. Well, her full name is Florence Jane Tartuffa Finn, uh, but she goes by Flora Jayne. What would I do differently? Yeah, you can nose train them on anything. You can nose train them with blue cheese. You know what I mean? These guys are hardwired for it. I probably would have tried to get her on Matsutake sooner. That would be one. But what happened was we had those fires the year I got her. So she had to be inside a lot. She was a puppy. So nose training your dog, it burns off a lot of energy, and I got her during COVID, so I got the dog that was right for me at a time when I had time to spend time with her and train her. Um, and it was also pretty good timing for the truffle industry, so I wouldn't have fed her human food. There's a lot of regular dog training things I would have done differently. So she would harass me when I ate dinner, but yeah, and she's a huge poo eater. And and I tried to shame her and get her to drop it, and she won't do that. And I actually one night she wanted to play Find the Truffle. I have a little porch on my houseboat, and my two cats like to play it too because they get treats. They all play it. And I didn't have time. And then later I took her for a walk, and she was really trying hard to eat poo. And I was like, this is me making it more noble. Is that she wants to hunt truffles. She wants to do her job, and if that's all she can hunt, that's what she's going to do, because she was like pulling really hard to do it. And I was like, oh wow, she has this talent, and this urge, and it's kind of like having a gifted and talented kid. If you don't let them do their talent, they're going to be a pain in the ass. And a lot of people are getting these dogs now because they look like doodles, and they're work dogs, So it's something where I have breeders contact me and they go, do you know mushroom hunters who want one of these dogs? And there is a rescue for them if you're good with dogs. This is my first dog, and I was calling the breeder all the time, like, is this okay? Is that okay? What do I do? But if you're really good with dogs, you can get an adult one that, needs a home, is a rescue. But they can be quirky. Think so. I mean, because they get calmer. They get so much calmer as they get older. I mean, when they're puppies, they're all over the place. And some people think if they let their dog off the leash in the woods, it's going to run off and never come back. And I don't know if that's true or not. If it chases a deer or something. But no, I would just say that your dog's going to enjoy nose training no matter what. And if you're out in the woods hunting mushrooms, there's no harm in trying. There's no harm in doing it. And if you have like a little Jack Russell or something, they're gonna love it. Some of those like high energy dogs that want a job. There's gonna be some, but the Joriad every year, which is it's an amateur truffle hunting competition they have in Oregon as part of the Oregon Truffle Festival. Lagottos, there's a lot of Lagottos. They generally come in like second and third, but the winner is almost never a Lagotto. Last one was a golden retriever, and I mean it got like way more truffles than everybody. Before that, it was like a Chihuahua mix that like for years won, and I was just like put all the Lagottos to shame. But getting a Lagotto for truffles, it's kind of like getting a retriever for you. You're just gonna have a better chance it's gonna be interested. But all dogs have a phenomenal sense of smell, and if you can get them to focus a little bit, or just get them to think she thinks for her it's a game, and she likes it. Yeah, that flying squirrel is pretty cute, right? Like if you could get that flying squirrel as a pet, but they would eat it. That's kind of the problem. Well, so what I am hoping to do is she's probably, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 9 years old, is get a puppy. Yeah. And she'll train it in certain ways. We have a friend who has a Lagotto, and Gia doesn't really hunt truffles, and we say Flora Jayne is the bad cousin that like teaches you how to smoke. That's so she might teach the puppy some bad tricks, she might teach the puppy some good tricks, but what I am hoping is to get, and I'm gonna go to the same breeder and say I want a truffle dog, because she chose the right one for me. And that's kind of, and they know, she goes to people's homes and she looks at their homes, and she had some people in San Francisco who wanted one, and she came back, she goes, you can't have a puppy. She said, you have $10,000 carpets on your floor and you are 4 stories up, and that puppy could fall down and die. So she gave her a 1-year-old dog that was already trained, and it was a really good fit. So, you know, that's what really a responsible breeder, or if it's a family with a bunch of kids, she generally recommends a male because they're going to be friendlier and easier.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
So you can train a dog to I met a guy 20 years ago and trained his dog to die. Throw the apple shell, creek, 4 foot deep, and got the dog going, dive it down, bring it back to the shell. They took the shell out of the ocean. For users that way, dog knows the difference, don't know the difference. Have shell, never shell. So we're bringing them out hot.
That's amazing. That is a good dog. Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Well, so she did do one thing so I like to go get seaweed in the summer. And I was looking for a kombu for the book for a photo shoot and couldn't find it. And I was just, you know, tide was out, tons of seaweed. I said, Flora Jayne, go find kombu. And she walked over to a patch and barked. And the photographer was there for that. It was probably just happened, you know, it's probably coincidence, but we were like, she's also a seaweed dog. But did you see there was a video recently of it? Somebody got a rescue dog that ties off their boat in San Francisco Harbor. Yeah, it jumps off with the lines, gets the lines wrapped. It's like, yeah, completely. And it's somewhere on Facebook, somewhere, but there is a dog in San Francisco that ties off boats in the harbor. So, and this is the thing, if it's a work dog, they need a job and they love a job, you know? And a lot of people get these, you know, the sheep dogs and they just go crazy because they don't have enough activity and they don't have the work to do. And, you know, but if you can get them focused, they love it. So we're going to put her to work.
So we're going to go out the store. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, let me put a little work jacket on her. You ready to go? We'll go out and just do this. So I'll take about 5 of these with me. And when we're just looking for porcini and chanterelles in the neighborhood, I'll put them out. We'll do about 5, 10 a day. Sit. And you know, you said she's hardwired for it. It's kind of natural, but it helps her.
Are you meeting us?
I know. So we're okay, my love. Yeah. All right. We ready? Set. All right, babe. And let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. You're gonna show me? Show me. Show me. Because you found the first one already. Show me, baby. Show me. No, oh, I touched it. Touch it with her nose. And oh, that's my girl. That's my girl. Oh, that's yes. And can you show me? Can you show me, babe? Can you show me? Can you show me? Can you show me? Nice. So training for touch with your nose when it's too small to see with your eye or you have a hard time seeing it. That's what Alana taught me. All right, go. Let's go. Let's go. What you got? Come on. Let's go. What is it? What is it? Come on. Come on. You got this. You got this. It's okay. Take your time. You got it, babe. She's where is it? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Oh my goodness, she got it. Oh, big girl, big girl. All right. What does it look like? What is it? This is just a T-ball with a truffle in it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. That's it. That's what she's smelling. And so so when I have those and they're not nice truffles, I'll just bury them and then I tag something with like a clothespin. Yeah. T-ball. Where'd it go? Oh, where'd it go, babe? Where'd it go? Hi. Break on the ground. Yeah. Oh, right here. Look at that. Come on, you. You got this. Let's go, baby. Let's go. You got this. Come on. Let's go. Let's go. Where is it? Where is it? And sometimes they're in the forest. She zoomies, and I just let her. Run her energy up. Did you find it? Where is it? Where is it?